My guest today is Sheila Marikar, who has parlayed a college background in the humanities into a succession of blogging, reporting, and producing roles with various media outlets. She currently reports and blogs for ABCNewscom, and her work has also appeared in the Huffington Post, Women's Health, and Mashable, among other publications, broadly covering entertainment, movies, television, music, fashion, lifestyle, food and wine, and fitness. We'll let her get into the details of how she manages to do all that in a moment. Sheila, it's a real treat to have you. Welcome, and thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.
I would love to start out by first just getting a little bit of a sense of your background. Can you tell us how old are you, what's your academic background, and where have you worked in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm 10 years old. My academic background, I went to Cornell University, graduated in 2005 with a degree cum laude in history. Uh, I spent a lot of my time at Cornell trying to figure out what I wanted to do, which I think common to a lot of students is that's what a liberal arts degree is for right now, thankfully. And I fell into history because I wanted to do something where I was writing and reading and kind of analyzing things from a humanities perspective. I I kind of left college with the sense knowing that I really liked writing. I just didn't know how exactly I wanted to do that in my career. And while I was at Cornell, I went to the Cornell in Washington program, which basically you do an internship and is in Washington for a semester. It's sort of an alternative to studying abroad. And my internship there was with ABC News in the DC bureau. And that was the first job that I had that really sort of clicked in a way that when the internship was over, I wanted to continue what I was doing and work with the people that I had met there. And it just it was very satisfying for me to be able to dig into a story and sort of produce something that had a tangible result at the end. And I could sort of say, oh, that has my name on it, or even if not my name, that's something that I contributed to, and I have that result in front of me. So after that internship, my senior year at Cornell, during my winter break, I interned at ABC in New York, and I was working with our business unit, helping out on business reporting. This was around the time of it was 2004, so it was when there was that tsunami in Japan. That was a tsunami, and that was one of the big projects that I was on, is figuring out what companies were giving in response to that. It was happening right around the holidays, so it was sort of one of those times when people had to act quickly and show, that despite everything that was going on here, show their support for this huge crisis happening over there. And with the way that online journalism was kind of picking up, it was an opportunity for me to start writing things online relating to business and consumer issues and other things of that nature. And after that, I went back to Cornell, graduated, and I wanted to continue what I was doing at ABC. And the best way for me to do that was to the desk assistant program that they still have at ABC News. I believe it's called the Desk News Associate Program now, DNA. But that's basically you're sort of given to a show or platform, and you help assist them in any and everything from answering phones to doing research to distributing scripts. It's kind of a hit the ground running way to understand how a news organization works. And that's how I got my foot in the door at ABC, and I've actually been there ever since then.
Got it. And now you actually have a pretty significant presence in terms of like blogging your own content in entertainment and lifestyle issues. How did that switch happen, and how, like, tactically, what were the step-by-step things that you took to go from the desk assistant program, which is probably the entry point for a lot of people, to actually doing something where you were carving out kind of a voice for yourself? And I'm sure a lot of other people would love to kind of learn about how you did that.
Yeah, it was, while I was in the desk assistant program, I was still contributing articles to abcnews.com when I could. I was working, a lot of my hours were very crazy. It was something like midnight to 9 a.m. or 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. because I was working on some of our overnight news shows in Good Morning America. And, the news never stopped. So there's always someone at ABC 24/7, over people working to make what you see really great. And So when I had time, I was doing things on the side, and kind of started to realize that it had to that having a personal brand was very important, and that increasingly among people who I saw in the industry, and sort of the people who were becoming known for what they were writing or who they were talking to, or sort of creating personalities, were very much they were taking charge of curating that on their own. So I did start looking into, well, is there a way for me to establish a blog presence that where I'm also able to say some things about myself, and kind of differentiate who I am as an employee of ABC, but also as someone who is just like anyone else, has hobbies, has pastimes, and that's, with the advent of Twitter, that's the kind of things that we want to share. What makes people people. And I started maintaining a blog with the Huffington Post, and I also at the same time was looking to transition into a role that would be more about writing all the time as opposed to just when I had a chance to. So from being a desk assistant, I went to 2020 in prime time, where I was a production secretary and was working on actually turning the scripts of various programs into articles for online, in addition to getting all the various production elements that you need for a 20-minute long or an hour long piece to go on the air. And while I was doing that, I realized, that writing and online journalism is something I want to commit to. So then I moved over to ABCNews.com full time. Was working with the Good Morning America section of our website for a few months before I became our entertainment reporter. And that actually happened with a story about years that got 2 million hits in 7. And it was sort of about the decline of modesty in Hollywood, breakdown, and kind of flashing everyone and just being very inappropriate. And that kind of marked my transition from straight news into more popular culture. And then I started looking for other opportunities for me to continue to expand my voice and reach. Launching a Twitter account. Honestly, networking is a huge thing, especially in marketing and digital media. Meeting people who are doing you want to be doing, or the people who write the things that you read, or sort of just becoming part of that collaborative community was a really big thing for me in terms of increasing the amount of people that I reach.
Got it. So it started really with an entertainment-oriented article you kind of just wrote on your own, still somewhat in your own time, that ended up
Well, it
doing
was,
very well.
sorry to interrupt. Yeah, it was an assignment that was given to me.
Oh, okay.
Uh, but it was given to me in such a way that it was like, figure out how to do this story in a way that would be appropriate for us to do, not in the way that Perez Hilton was doing it, or TMZ was doing it, or a gossip magazine did it.
Got it.
So that was sort of, the way to figure out how do I craft a voice in this great opportunity that I have, and also kind of compete with the other people who are covering the same story.
Got it. So you took this assignment, it trafficked really well, and then that basically grew into an opportunity to keep doing stories like that. Is that fair?
That is fair. Yes,
Okay.
exactly. That was sort of my proving that I could do it, and then getting the opportunity to do it on a all the time basis.
Got it. You mentioned a moment ago that it's important to build a personal brand. You learned a lot about doing that. It sounds like you were exploring the social media to do that, to develop that for yourself. What are some of the big lessons that you learned about how to do that, and maybe some of the things that people often overlook or underestimate about what it takes to do that well, that they can learn from you?
One of the things that I hear often from people who come to me for advice, or who are looking to start careers in journalism, is that one of the first questions I ask them is whether they have a Twitter account, whether they're blogging, whether they have a way of putting out what they think about daily issues and the news of the day in a format that someone who Googles them can find out what this person is all about. And a lot of times I hear that they don't, or they maybe they have a Twitter account, but they only use it to follow people, or they want to start a blog, but it's too daunting to figure out how do I have a blog that's different from what everyone else is doing. And I struggled with the same thing, especially in terms of having a blog. I've had so many different personal ones just to sort of be my platform to talk about issues that I care about, or to, when I was getting married, I created a blog that was dedicated to planning kind of sort of nuanced Indian wedding in America that isn't the same as what everyone else is doing. And, you create these things because they have something to do with your life at that time. And I came to realize that it's okay if you abandon a blog for and come back to it, or if you start something and say, I'm going to use this to blog about, I'm going to use this to blog about energy issues, and then 6 months later you pivot and decide, I'm going to blog. I want to talk more about the economy. That's okay. You don't have to. I don't think anyone on the internet can expect 100% consistency from a personal blog at all times. And no one's. I don't think that's the goal. So for me, I had to say, you know what? I'm going to start something. I'm going to just see what I can do on Twitter, and just kind of keep building it up. Just don't think too much about it, Think of it like a conversation. Like if you were to, Google is the way that so many first impressions are made nowadays. You Google someone, you see what do their photos look like? What are some other things that they've written, or what is their name on? And so if you think about it like, well, I want to have something out there as opposed to nothing. And if that something is just, maybe I had some intelligent thing to say about this article that I read, and even if it's only a sentence or two long, why not have that out there as opposed to not having any information about myself? So that's sort of how I overcame that hurdle. And Twitter now is sort of my preferred way of having that conversation with people about daily issues on a minute-to-minute basis. It's quick, it's easy. I think the 140 character limit is actually very liberating, because it sort of democratizes the whole thing. Everyone has the same amount of space to say whatever they can. So that's what I tell people when they wonder how they can increase their online presence and sort of. Sorry, one sec. Oh, okay. Sorry, Andrew. Yeah, it's going to come on. I think that Twitter is the best way for someone who's looking to get into media to kind of get their feet wet and take part in a conversation that's happening every minute of every day. Follow the people that you want to be working for, the people that you want to, and you'll end up engaging with them in conversations that are actually meaningful.
Got it. So it's not that one has to blog every day. It doesn't even mean that you have to blog consistently about the same topics. How do you elevate yourself above the noise? There's a lot of noise out there, and how do you
say that because it's went off again? I'm so sorry. Let me just
sure.
Sorry.
No problem. No problem.
Oh, we're all good now. Say that.
So how do you ensure that you're saying something intelligent enough to actually be, worthy of elevating above the noise versus just being part of the noise?
That's a good question. It's hard. One of the great things about Twitter is so quickly. It's not while someone, if they go to your Twitter profile, they can see everything that you've said about something within a given day, or if they keep scrolling a couple weeks, a couple months. It's a very sort of time-sensitive thing. So I sort of use a trial and error process. Like obviously you don't want to just be screaming about things that, typing in all caps about things that aren't really pertinent to anyone but yourself. But if you're, say the only thing you're doing is retweeting, and you're seeing that not a lot of people are following you, that you're not really engaged in a back and forth on, you're just kind of recirculating, then that's not what I use Twitter for. I like to have a dialogue with my followers, whether I know them personally or not. If I've written an article about, say Homeland, I interviewed the producers and some of the cast and put that out there to my followers to comment on and tell me what you want to hear from these people when I speak with them again. And whether I know them or not, I'm going to take any thoughtful kind of consideration of that topic into my thought process when I speak with people again. And I think that's sort of, you want to be able to craft a conversation. It shouldn't be a one-way dialogue. Say, someone like Donald Trump, who recently has been the subject of criticism for so many people from Hollywood and politics and all sorts of walks of life, because he has been using it to rant, not to engage in a meaningful way. And it takes a bit of learning. It's kind of a trial and error. But the nice thing about it is that it's out there for everyone, and anyone can take part in this. And you sort of, every day you get a little, I think you understand a little bit better what sort of plays well on Twitter and what are the good methods for connecting versus what falls flat.
Sure. So if you add up all the time one spends blogging, Twitter, Facebook, all the different platforms, how much time should one be investing to, not half-ass it, to do it the right way?
So it's hard to put it in an hour or sort of minute kind of quantifier, but I'll say that the way that I do things is I have two screens. One of them is devoted only to TweetDeck, so I can just glance over and look at my various columns and see what people are tweeting about and see what my mentions are and what's trending. And for me, that works in the sense that it's right there. If I want to say something, I can just scroll over, type it, go back to what I'm doing. And I didn't always have that. And when I'm at home, I'm just working on my laptop. So I just have TweetDeck open. I constantly check it. I am very much a multitasker. And if I don't have 20 tabs open on Google Chrome, then something is not right. That's sort of the way that I have to operate. So I would say it's something that you should just keep checking in. Maybe for some people, maybe it's once every 5 minutes, or maybe it's once every half an hour, depending on how you work. But to me, if I were only looking at Twitter, say, for 5 minutes every week, that wouldn't really tell me anything, because it's such a fast-moving platform. You really, even if overnight you wake up and in bed, I'll look at what people I'm following have said on Twitter in the past 7 hours or so, and really, it's only the information maybe from the past half an hour that has a lot of relevance anymore, or that feels like something that I need to know this morning. And that, of course, can change. That's one situation, and that by no means applies to everything. But I think that it's something that you have to, if you want to build up your presence on Twitter, you have to kind of make an investment. And I'm going to check on this every so often, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Just keep looking at it and figure out what you like to do.
So it sounds like really for Twitter, it's continuous engagement. For blogging, it can be more infrequent.
Yeah.
Got it.
I do agree with that, but I think it's been, I don't remember who said it. I'm sure lots of people have said it, but the more you write, the better you are at it. And that definitely applies to blogging and tweeting and Facebook status updating, any sort of written communication that you have out there. I think that if you say I'm only going to blog once a month, then maybe that puts a lot of pressure on you to make sure that once monthly post is really great and really worthy of being out there. But if you say, let me try to do just one thing every day, and maybe it's only 2 sentences or a paragraph, or maybe it's not even that much. Maybe it's just a photo that you posted on your Tumblr that meant something to you that day, or you're reblogging it from someone. I think it's a lot less daunting when you consider that it's not you have so many opportunities. You have an infinite amount of opportunities to put yourself out there. So just kind of figure out a system that works for you, and that takes away some of the sort of second guessing that goes on in all of our own minds when we post something online. Like, is this going to come back to haunt me, or is this going to be Am I going to think I'm stupid for saying that a year from now when I look back on this? Which is something that I actually deal with now because I recently signed up for Time Hop, which is are you familiar with Time Hop?
I'm not.
It's a service that basically it's kind of like a diary where like anything online is, but it sends you an email every morning of what all your Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all your social networking activity was a year ago on that day.
Uh,
So, which is cool. It's sort of like here's a snapshot of what it looked like a year ago based on activity. And sometimes I look at it and I'm like, what? Why was I tweeting about that? Or why did I upload that picture? It's not really that cool. Or it's sort of it does make me think twice sometimes now that I'm do I really want this record out there? But again, it's also just cool on a sort of historical perspective.
sure.
But it is a reminder that the internet is written in ink, and whatever you say is out there forever. But if everyone's writing, then that
Sure.
kind of just the platform.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. I'll have to check that out. Let me switch gears for a moment and ask you, what is it like to work for ABCNewscom? Tell me a little bit about your current role and what you do on a day-to-day basis. If I were
So
to, if
on
I
a
so sorry, if I were to like shadow you for a week or a month or even just a day, what would I observe?
You would observe me looking at a lot of stuff online, making a lot of phone calls. It's very interesting, and I have to say, there's never a boring day at this job. On a day-to-day basis, I'm looking at and I'm controlling our entertainment coverage. So I'm looking at what stories we should be every morning and throughout the day. I sort of I come up with a game plan for myself and the people that blog and report for our entertainment section on a day-to-day basis around somewhere between 8 and 9 a.m. And by noon, that plan, at least 50% of the time, is completely shifted. Just because of news stories that have come up in the past couple hours, or we hear about something coming down the pipe that we want to get on top of quickly, or for whatever reason it is. That's the nature of the news cycle, just becoming faster and faster every day. So I, on a daily basis, will blog or report out between, I guess, 3 to 6 stories. Sometimes more, sometimes less. Sometimes I'm working on a feature piece or an interview that may not air for a couple of weeks. Or I'm planning our award show prep that's going to happen in a month. What you would see if you shadowed me is me editing articles that are coming in, writing a few on my own, constantly keeping tabs, usually via Twitter, on what's going on out there and what other organizations are posting, what celebrities are saying, kind of what news stories are bubbling up that we should get on before we get into a position where we're following other people. We always want to be out in front and reporting accurate, interesting information. So my job is to make sure that we're doing that, and also creating content that people want to read. The beauty of entertainment is that I like to think that what I'm doing is helping people have fun during their day, and this is something that you want to read on a break. This is something that you want to share with your friends. This is, you're not necessarily reading this article to get informed about something that has an impact on your daily life, but it's fun. It's shareable. It's content that I like to think makes people's days better. So it's always sort of thinking about, well, what would I want to do? Covering the whole celebrity space is like, well, what would people want to know about these Hollywood stars or sort of their lifestyles that would make their lives a little bit better too.
So I'm really curious. How do you go about developing a story, deciding what you want to write about or what gets developed into a story tactically? Like how do you decide what you're going to write about, when, and how does it go from idea to publication? Like, what are the kinds of things that sort of you pick up on a scent and say, yeah, that's a story we should go follow.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I think as the law, it helps that I've been at ABC for a long time, and I know what sort of stories we should be doing. At the same time, I know what maybe isn't necessarily in our wheelhouse, or maybe our audience wouldn't be so interested in that story. It's and in terms of sort of reporting it out, something like, say, Justin Bieber and Selena Gomez breakup, which I did a couple of days ago. That's something that, people have been reporting on that for the entire length of their relationship. There's always a blog that's saying, oh, rumors that they've broken up, or someone on Twitter, because they have such amazingly invested, that these people are always sort of on top of their information. A lot of times some of the rumors come from Twitter. So it's determining whether, well, do we pay attention to that, or, we're actually hearing from some of our sources that this is happening, and then we start making phone calls, because you have to run everything. When it comes to celebrities, you always want to call their representatives and see what their statement is on the record, whether it's incredibly important that we report out the most accurate information, and we're not just basing it on, well, TMZ says this, or some other place says this. That's not what we're in the business of doing. So we're very much, as much as so much reporting has moved online, as big as online news is becoming, a lot of our reporting tactics are very similar to what they were years ago, where you're making phone calls, sometimes lots of phone calls, and really, to be a good reporter, you have to be really persistent, and that goes for entertainment or anything else. And sometimes that does mean you can't just email. You have to call. You have to call repeatedly. Sometimes you do have to track people down and make sure that you're reporting something that is not out there, and that is, you're reporting the facts, not just what another blog is saying. So that is very, very important to me. And I think as some parts of online news have become more about aggregation than creating original content, I want to make sure that we are still, devoted to those principles of reporting, that original, accurate, and interesting news is what should come first.
Sure. To that end, how do you get hold of, the celebrities you need to talk to in order to get quotes for your stories, or to get their input or perspective? Like, what are some of the creative ways that you've used to reach out to celebrities and other folks you need to talk to develop and write your stories? I'm always curious about this, particularly in this space.
Yeah, well, there's I do have access to a database of emails and phone numbers for everyone's publicist or manager. So sometimes it's like that. But when you want to get a celebrity quote kind of off the cuff, and maybe not with the sort of panache that going through a manager or publicist sometimes lends, honestly, the best way to do it is to just ask them yourself in person. That would be at a red carpet event, or some sort of opening, or something that you get alerted to. As I think pretty much any entertainment reporter in the industry would say, they get dozens and dozens of emails about events happening in their city or close to them a day, with a list of celebrities who are going to be in attendance. So that, when it comes to, if you just want someone to react to something, and the best way to do it is to really to catch them in person, and kind of start creating that dialogue, where it's not just like you thrusting a microphone in their face and shouting questions, but even if it's on a red carpet and you only have their attention for 3 minutes, kind of making it, you want your subject, whoever it is, to feel like it's just you and them talking, and it's not you're not going to make them look bad. So it's sort of it's hard. It's something that I hope that I get better at every day, but it's a kind of nuanced thing, to, like, the way that we're talking now. We just met, and you want to make the person feel comfortable. You want them to share things about themselves that they might not with a stranger. So every day you're just practicing and figuring out what, maybe when do I ask this question? Should I ask a couple of other questions? Or, how do I want to say something in a way that is going to get an honest answer and not kind of put someone off?
Sure. That sounds like a hard thing to do, especially if, I mean, it's one thing the way we're talking now where, we have each other's undivided attention, but I imagine at a red carpet event, there's lots of people there. There are a lot of reporters who want their time. They're distracted by, their friends that they're seeing coming down the rope line. How, under those circumstances, which I just imagine are extraordinarily difficult to create that kind of intimacy that you were talking about, what are the best ways to do that? How do you actually make that work?
It's hard. And, the other thing, though, is that you have to keep in mind that they're also sometimes experts at this. Some of the best people I've talked to are people who have been in the industry for a long time and just kind of, being on a red carpet and being asked very personal questions by people that you don't know at all is old hat to them. Many times that they've figured out a way and deal with it very graciously and kind of, give enough to the reporter that they're not going to pry for more, yet keep their own reputation and sort of image in perfect condition. That said, I think that one of the first things I learned from covering events like the Oscars and the Emmys and Sundance and other literally there are just truckloads of celebrities all over the place, is that you really have to be persistent sometimes, and whether that means appealing to their publicist and sort of pulling them aside and saying, "Hey, I just want 2 minutes to ask, one or two questions, and it's going to be about this." It's really you kind of want to get the sign off that just show the person representing them that you're not malicious or crazy. You're just you're an honest person that's trying to get their job done and do it well. That helps a lot of times to hear the person that's walking them around, or it's you gotta get yourself out there. You have to make sure that they're noticing you and that they're aware that you really, really want to talk to them. Anytime. I think all of us would agree that if someone really, really wanted to talk to you and was really trying to get your attention, then you would gravitate to them. But you want to strike that balance between sort of being persistent and being in your face, kind of menacing and not appealing to engage with. And again, it's sort of a trial. And I'm trying to remember now the first red carpet situation that I went to, and I know I was just intimidated by the amount of people, both in terms of the celebrities on one side and the press on the other side, and how much literal physical jostling you have to do to get your tape recorder or microphone in there to get your question answered. But it becomes fun. It's its own kind of sport on both sides of the aisle, just figuring out how do I get my questions answered, work with the people next to me who are literally shoulder to shoulder with you, and not annoy them, sort of befriend the celebrities, the publicists, and make this situation that could be potentially very awkward and kind of panic attack inducing a really fun and enjoyable work experience.
Is that to say that you also see a lot of the usual suspects, I guess, at some of these events in terms of other press reporters who are there? Do you guys all know each other? Is it a small community?
It's a very small community, and I whether in New York or LA, I oftentimes do see a lot of the same faces, and we know each other. We have each other's emails. We follow each other on Twitter, and it's very much a community. Of course, if you're working with someone who covers the same thing as you, who is going to rush off to the event, back to their computer office to file the same story. I think there are some people that think, well, I need to beat them. Competition. I need to, forget being friends with anyone. I'm, the classic America's Next Top Model quote, "I'm not here to make friends." But that sort of attitude doesn't always play well when you're around these people all the time. You don't want to make enemies when you're out there. And so you have to kind of figure out how do I uphold what I'm trying to do, not not be the person that no one ever wants to talk to or give information to, because there's always a situation when maybe you don't know where the next event is, or you're wondering where the after party is because you're trying to figure out how to interview someone that you didn't get on the red carpet. And that's where your colleagues come in handy. You need, and they need you to, so that everyone can kind of make sure that they're on top of everything. But it is a small world, and it's kind of nice. It's nice to swap stories of horrible screenings that you've attended, or kind of who is like, did this person answer your question? Because I know you've sort of asked the same thing as me. What did they say? And you just it's like any type of water cooler conversation that you would have, except you're not at all near a water cooler, and you wanna cultivate those kind of place sort of friendships, so that it just makes the experience more fun and rewarding all around, I think.
Sure, sure. To this end, I mean, I imagine, especially in the press, especially in the entertainment space, it's easy to make mistakes on both sides. And I was just curious if there are any, like, when you step back and look back, you've been in this business for a long time now. Would you say there is a most important mistake that you've made in your career so far that really taught you a lot? And if so, what did it teach you about how you would do things differently? If you, I guess, could go back and get a do-over on it, what would it be?
Gosh, most important mistake. I'm trying to think what that would be. I think every reporter has had this happen to them, where they think that they're recording a conversation and they're not. That's embarrassing and really panic-inducing. But I don't know. There are ways to recover from that, and I'm not sure if I would call that the most important mistake that I've made. Gosh, let me think about that. I would say that there have been times where I wanted to ask a question, but was afraid of either insulting the person or making them feel uncomfortable, or just on a personal level, I didn't want to feel like the bad guy. I didn't want to be the inflictor of awkwardness on them. And I think that it's just something that you have to get over. It's sort of like I was saying, you don't want to be menacing or mean, but sometimes there are questions that have to be asked, and you have to be the one to do it, and it's your job to do that. For example, I was interviewing Whitney Houston's sister-in-law a couple of weeks ago, and they have a new reality show, and I had to ask, why would you start filming this reality show 3 months after Whitney Houston's death, and her daughter is in it, and weren't you concerned about what that might do? And I didn't feel, I don't know, I haven't been in that situation, so I can't say for certain that I would know what it would feel like to get asked that question. But it's one of those things where you don't, not everything is sort of rainbows and butterflies and all happy all the time. But I think you just have to get over the idea that you're in the business of making these people feel good and be, sunshine 100% of the time. Sometimes there are tough questions that need to be asked, and it's your job to ask them. So, and you never want to be in that position where you're regretting, oh, I wish I had asked that thing, because then you end up reading the answer that you would have gotten in another place, and you could have been that person with that information, and you had the idea, but you just didn't have the guts to say it.
Yeah, yeah. So Sheila, you've been at ABCNews.com for a while. How did the other freelance gigs that you have had with women's health and the Huffington Post and other publications. How did those come about? And sort of from start to finish, did you reach out to them? Did they reach out to you? And how did they develop into actual, sort of consistent work?
With the women's health one, because that's sort of the most recent example. But one of my friends who works for the magazine approached me in January or December of last year, saying that they had started this new Fit Bride blog franchise, and the woman who was the previous Fit Bride blogger for them had just gotten married. So, excuse me, one sec. So they were looking for a new blogger for to sort of do a once a week post about fitness and diet and kind of user friendly tips for how other women who are about to get married can go through the whole process stress free and still manage to lose weight or tone up, do whatever they want to do to look fabulous. So it sounded like a really fun opportunity to do something that wasn't something that I had been doing on an everyday basis in terms of writing about fitness and diet and things that I really enjoy reading about and wanted to write more about, but hadn't sort of found the way to get my voice out there in that way. So that became it was actually it was a lot of work, but it was also a lot of fun to do and to sort of think about. I'm making a recipe tonight. Oh, this would be something great to Instagram and then send to Women's Health along with everything that I did and share things in that way. That was sort of a really kind of servicey. It was a form of servicey journalism that I hadn't done a lot of, but it was just really great to dabble in that for almost a year, and that was completely out of the product of she's someone that I'm friends with, the woman from Women's Health who approached me to do this, but we met through a media networking event probably in 2008 and have become very close friends since then, and sort of speaks to the power of networking, not just so that you can figure out what your next career move is, or so that you can, if you're sending a resume to some place, you can ping the person and say, hey, you work here, can you send this to the hiring manager? But it really just it sort of offers you rewarding friendships, of course, and in the bigger sense, and then also these kind of unique opportunities to contribute to places that you wouldn't otherwise. I did a couple articles for Mashable, and that happened the same way, where someone who actually went to Cornell graduated around the same time as me, and I met a couple years later at a networking event. We started talking. They didn't have a lot of people at that time covering the entertainment world, and it was at a time when a lot of pop stars were newly getting onto Twitter and sort of figuring out what they wanted to do. So I did an article about that, talked about some kind of new concert watching platforms that were coming up on a social level so that people could share their experience of watching a show, even if they weren't all in the same room or at the same venue. And it was a great experience. That actually led me to lead a panel at Social Media Week LA a few years ago about how musicians were using Twitter and social media to engage with their fans. And it's funny now because this at the time when we did this panel, it still was a really sort of new thing for musicians to be on Twitter, and we had conversations about, do you get inspiration for your lyrics from talking with your followers or fans, or is it, what are you using this for? And now when you look at how many stars are on Twitter, people like Justin Bieber, who was very much an internet sensation that turned into a more mainstream music, mainstream pop culture sort of mega star. It's funny to think that it almost feels quaint that we have that kind of conversation about social media when now it's so much part. It's for a lot of musicians, I think it's something that goes hand in hand with creating music, is sort of having a presence on these platforms.
Cool. What do you see yourself, doing or going? Where do you see yourself going ideally in the future, medium term, long term, and how do you think what you're doing today will help you toward that goal?
I want to, like I said, I want to continue telling stories, and I think that's why I got into this business to begin with. When I was at Cornell, the things that I enjoyed, one of the things I enjoyed most about being there was a job that I had with a research magazine that was put out on a quarterly basis, and I got to interview people who were at the top of their fields doing research that in many cases was literally going to be life changing for a lot of people, and just telling their how they came upon this project and how they're advancing the work in their field, and sort of getting it out there to a mass audience was really interesting to me. And I think, I want to keep doing that, and I'm happy to say that I don't know exactly how I want to do that in 5 or 10 years, because I am confident with the way that we're seeing innovation happening in terms of online storytelling that I don't even know what it's going to be. I don't know if any of us know. So yeah, so I'm excited to see what new tools come out in terms of storytelling, and how how journalists and how people in general are going to share stories. And I want to be at a place that is that continues to be accepting of all of those things and is willing to try new things. As much as I absolutely love a long form journalism story, and I do believe in all the tenets of you have to make your calls, you have to do on the ground reporting and find characters for stories in places that are not Google. I'm just looking forward to seeing how all of that evolves, and how it makes us better storytellers and better consumers of information that's around out there. People say sometimes, I hear people bemoan sometimes the internet and social media, because it feels like people aren't interacting enough with one another and are not learning enough about other people's stories. I do think that walking down the street and looking only at your iPhone and not looking around at your surroundings is a bad thing, and maybe being plugged in 24/7 is not ideal in terms of human interaction. But I don't think that we can think of a time in human history when people knew so much about so many things, because the internet has made all of this information so accessible, and because sharing news and sharing stories has become part of everyone's everyday life, whether or not you're in media, whether or not you say that you're invested in this sort of digital marketplace. It's something that my mom does. It's something that people's grandmothers do. It's sort of just changed the way that we operate.
Definitely. So last question for you, Sheila. What practical or tactical advice would you offer to folks who are interested in transitioning into journalism, especially if they don't come from a reporting or blogging background, for them to just think about as they navigate their own career choices and try to get their foot in the door in a reporting or a blogging role?
I would say that one of the best ways to do that, in terms of getting advice and talking to people who are working at the organizations that you might want to be at, is find them on Twitter, find them on LinkedIn, find them through their own blogs, and reach out to those people. And it might sound kind of outlandish for me to say you should reach out to a complete stranger and ask them to give you advice, but people have done that to me, and I've been happy to say, send me your resume or tell me what you're up to, and maybe I can, over email, phone, or in person, we can actually talk about how you might be able to do this. In fact, I met with someone 2 weeks ago who had just that type of question. She was in public policy and wanted to transition into a role in international journalism, and I gave her advice on how she might be able to do that. But being in news and being a journalist is all about out there and asking questions. So I think if you're looking to start that kind of career, one of the best ways to do that is to put yourself out there and ask questions to journalists who are doing what you want to be doing. And don't limit yourself to just your top 5 people. Ask 20 people, because you'll get 20 different stories about how they got to where they did, and they'll be able to put you in touch with people in their networks who might be able to hire you.
Great. Well, listen, Sheila, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us today. This was incredibly interesting to me. It is certainly not a part of the world that I know a lot about, so I definitely felt like I learned a lot, and hope our readers will find it similarly insightful as I did. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew.
Take care.